Finally Friday. I get home from work, I walk inside, and I just see all my shoes scattered across the entryway. Frustrated, I realize there's only one solution: building a shoe bench. I measured the size of my boots as that's my biggest pair of shoe and I want those to be able to fit in there nicely. As this project is for myself, I didn't want to use expensive wood for it since I won't be making any profit. I saw a video recently of this guy making a desk out of OSB board. It turned out really cool, so I thought it would be a fun, challenging project to try to do the same sort of thing but with a shoe bench. I decided this bench was going to have 8 compartments, and I wanted it to be about 4 feet long, which was perfect for this project because a piece of plywood is 4 feet by 8 feet long. So I cut out 5 pieces to the same size of 1 foot by 4 foot. The cuts were a little shaky, so I decided to straighten them up on the table saw. This brought the dimensions down to 4 feet by 11.5 inches. Then I went over to the chop saw and cut up the dividers that would be separating the compartments and hold it all together. These are 8 by 11.5. Once I had cut one this size, I set up a stop so I didn't have to measure again. I could just bump it up to the stop and cut repetitively. Since I'm coming up with the design as I go, I wasn't sure exactly how this was all going to fit together yet, so I only cut 5 pieces at first just to get started and see how it would come together. I screwed together all the pieces and made the first set of boxes. I liked how this looked, but I was getting hungry. So, it was time for some chicken and rice, of course. Now I'm back and all full. I was thinking about it, and the only way that made sense for me to put it together was to just make another one of these. So that's what I did. After that, I got it all screwed together, and then I stacked them up on top of each other. And at this point, I did not know how I was going to attach them together. So I just moved forward to the face frame and decided I'd come back to that later when I needed to. So here you can see my beautiful sketch of what the face frame is going to look like. If you don't know what a face frame is, it's basically going to be a bunch of oak that covers up the edges of the plywood. Now that I had all my measurements for my face frame written down, it was time to start cutting all the oak to size. This was the first time I built a face frame since I worked at a cabinet shop. So it was a good little challenge, but it actually came together quite a bit better than I thought it would. Although I did miss having a lot of the tools that are at that shop because they make it a lot easier, especially when trying to pocket screw all the hardwood together, because unless it's clamped down, it tends to move like a lot. So that's why you see me here once I'm attaching it, I'm clamping each piece individually, and even though it takes longer, it's well worth the time spent to make sure the pieces are flush. So it's the next day, it's about noon, and I've had a slow morning. It's Sunday, Super Bowl, but I don't watch the Super Bowl, I'm not into sports, but happy Super Bowl day if you are. I got this face frame put together, and that's ready to go on. I'm kind of just designing it as I go. Actually, not kind of, I'm completely designing it as I go. So, yeah, let's keep it rolling. At this point, I needed to attach the 2 pieces, and I decided the best bet was just gonna be to screw them together. And these screws are going in the top of it, so it's not like you'll see them anyways. Then I double checked the size to make sure it's square, and cut the back out of this 1/4 inch mahogany paneling. So my phone was charging, so I didn't record, but I attached this back in with all these little nails. So I pocket screwed all these holes along the whole thing, all the way around every side. So that is what's gonna attach the face frame on. So I was able to put some of the screws in, but I quickly realized that most of those pocket screw holes I had already drilled weren't gonna work because I didn't make the face frame wide enough and it was breaking through. So I added a few different angled screws into certain spots where I could fit them in without that happening, and I got it on there. And I just screwed it on as much as I could, and it's on there solid. Pocket screwed it as much as I could. It's on there solid. Looks pretty good. This base I made doesn't look the prettiest, but it's solid and it works good. And I'm gonna put felt pads all along these. This mahogany sheet. And I'm just gonna make this on the outside, here and here, and then at top, the overhangs on both edges and over the front a little bit. And that'll be the bench. Then I measured both ends, cut the pieces to size, glued, and nailed them on. Now that this was done, it was time to just make the top. And as you can see, I'm not used to making these kinds of videos yet, and I forgot to film yet another part. But here's me taking off the clamps and then setting it on to see how it fits. Square up the ends real nice. Way better. Throw it on there. The only thing is that the face frame, I left some overhang, but it's overhanging more than this. So I think I'm gonna trim this down so that it's closer to the inside on both. So then this overhangs the face frame. And so that's exactly what I did. I measured it in 1/4 inch at the bottom and top and then drew a straight line down each one. Ripped it with the skill saw, and although not perfectly straight, it's a lot better than it was. Now, all that was left to do is attach and finish the top. My glue up wasn't perfect and this piece is too big for the planer, so I chiseled off some of the excess wood that was sticking out and then gave it a quick sand over just to smooth it out. Now that I was finished with the bottom of the top, I flipped it over and attached it to ensure that I didn't go through the top or find a screw while sanding. I used little squares of that 1/4 inch paneling, as that would allow the screws to sit exactly halfway through the top. I spent the good next while just sanding the whole cabinet and getting it prepared to finish. I then picked up the whole thing and carried it over to the other room where I would finish it. I used the water-based polyurethane I already had that I thought would do just fine because it finished my coffee table pretty well. However, this would end up being a big problem. Back from work, got this thing. I'm gonna sand it now again. I'm not happy with how this other finish was starting. It's all green along here and like, it just doesn't look good. And it didn't bring any more color out. So then I sanded off all the finish from the top and the face frame. Then I vacuumed out all the compartments and now it's finally time to spray the finish on it. And would you look at that, it's just so much nicer. The color's way better and it's just a better finish overall and it's so much easier to apply too. So I'm just stoked on how this is turning out. And then I put on about 4 or 5 more coats without filming once again. Alright, so it's finally done. Putting it into its spot where it's gonna live. Right up by the wall like that. Let's see how it holds shoes. Oh yeah. This is what I built it around, was these boots. If these boots fit in good, then I succeeded. Moment of truth. Woo! Woo, 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 buddy. Let's go. And there it is, shoes in the bench.